Hello, I'm Donald Leggett and welcome to this latest edition of Share Views, brought to you by London South East. Our guest today is Mike Buck, the new CEO of Petro Matad, the only AIM-listed oil and gas company operating in Mongolia. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay, it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
And it's a pleasure to be here.
So you're the new CEO. When did you join?
I joined in October, so I've been with the company for a little over 3 months now.
Very good. And are you enjoying it so far?
So far, so good, yeah.
And why Petro Matad and why Mongolia?
Well, in the earliest part of my career, I started as an explorationist, and for 20 years I worked in out-of-the-way places, usually onshore. Was lucky to work in places where oil had been generated, and it was my job to find it. And I was associated with quite a few discoveries. So whether it was subconscious or conscious, when I was offered the chance to go to Mongolia and do exactly that, explore for oil in an out-of-the-way place, I thought this is right up my alley, so that's what I should be doing. I really like the rocks in Mongolia. I'm not the first person to say that. It's been studied by many geologists, but what the rocks could do for Petro Matad as a company, and actually Mongolia as a country, really quite excited me.
So that was what drove you to Petro Matad. You like the geology of Mongolia?
Yeah, and the geology in particular of the blocks that Petro Matad has. We have some two particular blocks, blocks 4 and 5 in the western part of Mongolia, not been drilled, but geologically they are very similar to the basins of northern China that have been proven productive for many decades. So with that geological similarity, that improves the chance of success in basins that are otherwise undrilled at the moment. So very exciting from a geological point of view and just what explorers like. And
from a political point of view, is it exciting or is it potentially tricky?
No, actually, Mongolia really wants to have independence in oil and gas. It's a country that's landlocked between Russia and China. It has some production at the moment, about 21,000 barrels a day. But that is operated by PetroChina, and all is exported to the refineries in northern China. Mongolia would like to have a refinery of its own, would like to be able to produce its own refined product rather than having to buy refined product from Russia. So the government is very, very supportive of exploration. And the program that we have got for 2018, I think excites the government of Mongolia just as it excites Petro Matad, in that this is the first time, certainly in Western Mongolia, that a significant program of drilling has been contemplated for many years.
And why would the government do it through Petro Matad rather than simply doing it for themselves?
Well, as in many countries around the world, the risk investment, it's encouraged to the exploration companies, the foreign exploration companies, whose business it is to put money into a business that is not necessarily going to generate a positive result. Governments tend not to do that. They tend to back in when discoveries are made under whatever the terms of the contract are. But in most countries around the world, exploration is the realm of the exploring oil and gas companies.
And they take a chunk of the revenues when successful, I presume.
Yeah, we have a fiscal system in Mongolia that's production sharing. Production sharing contracts are common around the world. The fiscal terms in Mongolia are very favourable to the foreign investor because the government wants to incentivise people to go and explore. So if we do find something, then we keep a large share of it, and that makes the economics of success very good.
Let's turn to Petrovis. They hold a share stake in Petro Matad. Who are Petrovis and why are they such a significant player in all this?
Petrovis was the entity behind the formation of Petro Matad, in fact. They are Mongolia's largest importer and distributor of fuel. They have gas stations all over the country, a very well-known company in Mongolia. And they decided many years ago in the early 2000s that they would like to be in the entire value chain of oil and gas.
Upstream as well as downstream.
Yes, so they signed a PSC. They then that company then merged with another company that had 2 other PSCs, forming Petro Matad, which was then listed on the AIM market. Petrovis has been the major shareholder in Petro Matad throughout. Has been very supportive, particularly a few years ago when times were tough. They were there to put money into Petro Matad to keep it moving along. And we've recently done a money raise in which Petrovis was once again very, very supportive. So a very well-known company in Mongolia and a very, very supportive shareholder for Petro Matad.
In your recent history, you had a slice of bad luck in that you'd partnered with British Gas in a, I'm not sure if it's a farm in or a farm out. I don't know, which way around was it?
Yes, BG farmed in after a lot of due diligence on not only Mongolia as a country and on the fiscal system, but on Petro Matad as a company, and also the technical aspects of the acreage. BG farmed into blocks 4 and 5, our Western Mongolian acreage, where we have the big potential.
And what happened next?
Well, shortly after the deal was finally consummated, and after spending some $18 million on seismic and gravity work and preparations for drilling, Shell then took over BG. Shell found itself in 50+ countries and needed to rationalize down to 30-some. And it was quite easy to exit the deal in Mongolia by just signing a relatively small check in the general scheme of things to be gone. So Shell didn't look at the technical details of the acreage. They just saw an easy way out.
In terms of musical chairs, that was an easy one to get rid of.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. But unfortunately for Petro Matad, it left the company in a position where, okay, they received a check from Shell, but that was enough to fund one well if they were lucky. So that left Petro Matad needing to do something if it wanted to have a more than one well program. And as an explorer, I like to drill my successful wells first, but one can never guarantee that. So it's nice to be able to drill a number of wells, and it's nice to be able to do them back to back for, you know, financially sensible reasons. Yeah, Petro Matad was left in a little bit of a limbo at that point, and did start looking for another farm-in partner.
Is that ongoing?
That process is ongoing. We're reviewing it now. When I joined, we reformulated the strategy for what we wanted to do, because basically we like the acreage. We think that we've got a good combination of structures close to existing production that have a very high chance of success and could be rapidly commercialized if they come in. And we have the romance of the Western Mongolian acreage where the size of the prize, the economics of success is spectacularly good for a company of our size. So we thought, well, if we can raise some money to fund that program ourselves, then the conversations that we may continue to have with farm-in partners will be doing it from a position where we don't need them to farm in, but if they're prepared to make us an offer that is value additive, that would allow us to expand the program, then that would be of interest to us.
I have to ask you, this is the real question. If your prospects are so good and all these explorers are looking at your data room, why are they not biting your hand off to be part of this great prospect that you've just outlined to me?
It's an interesting question, because if you look at the history of Mongolia, when it stopped being a Soviet satellite in the early 1990s, when the Soviet Union collapsed, geologists from a number of large companies, BP being one, went into Mongolia. Papers were published about what they found, saying, wow, look at the petroleum system here, undrilled in Mongolia, that is the same as the basins of northern China. And what Petro Matad has found in the farm-out initiatives it's been running over the last few years is generally the geologists and geophysicists who come from these companies who look at this, they really like the rocks. But it's been very difficult to get people to take the next step, which, you know, is becoming more and more difficult, I think, for companies these days, is the new country entry. It's hard to do a new country entry. It's difficult to convince management, right, that's the country we should now move into. And when that country is Mongolia, it sounds like a long way away. And it is. It's a landlocked country between Russia and China. From a commercial point of view, people worry, well, where are you going to sell the oil? All of its current oil is sold to China. Does that mean you get a bad price? Actually, no. There is oil being exported from Mongolia to China at the moment, and Mongolia receives a price benchmarked to globally traded crude. So that is not an issue, but that's the kind of worry that companies have when they're making a country entry decision.
Next question, what exactly do you do next? What does 2018 hold?
Okay, well, it's going to be quite exciting because having done the fundraise, which is subject to shareholder approval at our forthcoming EGM, once we've got that money in the bank, we're looking to drill 4 wells in 2018, 2 wells in the high impact frontier, if I can call it that, but it's a frontier with a much better than frontier chance of success because of the similarities to the basins in northern China that, as I said, are geologically similar.
But it's still a pond. It's not low-hanging fruit, as you might describe it.
No, it's not. But in the general scheme of things, you know, exploration worldwide, the chances of success on your first well are never that great. But when you know you've got the ingredients of a working petroleum system, which is something you don't usually know when you go into an area for the first time that's never been drilled before, that is that's a very, very nice thing to have for explorers.
So it's frontier without being frontier.
Yeah.
And what about the other 2?
And the other 2 wells are going to be drilled very close to the existing production. We have a block over in the east of Mongolia that's right next door to PetroChina's producing area. And we've got a family of prospects that cross the border between our block to the south, the PetroChina block to the north. We have 5 prospects. 3 of those 5 prospects have actually been drilled on the PetroChina side and have been found to be oil bearing. So actually what we're looking at is chance of success in those targets where we've got a better than 50% chance of success, maybe even as high as 75% chance of success, because it's actually an appraisal risk, not an exploration risk. And if we make discoveries there is an export infrastructure and processing infrastructure for the oil right next door with, we believe, spare capacity in that infrastructure, and we'd be looking to do a deal with PetroChina to join their party.
And so what's your relationship with PetroChina like at the moment?
There
and likely to be in the future?
Yeah, well, we're actually just now trying to initiate some discussions because I think in recent years, Petro Matad's activity on Block 20 has been very, very low. And so PetroChina has seen that and has thought, well, ultimately, Petro Matad will be timed out, their block will expire, and then if PetroChina had any designs upon it, then they could apply to the government of Mongolia to get it. We've recently got an extension to Block 20, and the government of Mongolia knows how enthusiastic we are to drill. So we are now going to be talking to PetroChina about sharing some services with them. We're hoping that we can get a slot in one of the rigs that works for them to be able to drill our prospects. And we will also be looking to do some form of commercial agreement with them, hopefully to add the production that we hope to find to their production. And
would you use the revenues you get from that production to fund the rest of your exploration?
It would be. I think
cycle?
Petro Matad as a company has waited a long time to have revenue. It would be very nice to have some as early as possible. I'd like to be drilling the Block 20 wells very early in our 2018 program, but until we had that extension, we weren't able to move forward on that. Now we have the extension, we're moving as quickly as we can to
now
get.
You're having commercial discussions with PetroChina.
Yeah, and those are starting now. Yeah.
Okay, and I'm sure they're going to be easy people to deal with.
Well, we'll see.
Okay, final question. What are the milestones we should measure you by and Petro Matad by? What does success look like in 2018?
Well, firstly, I think it's going to be important that we actually drill the wells we said we were going to drill in 2018. I've gone back to the organisation and said, right guys, we said we were going to drill 4 wells in 2018, so that's what we're going to do. We've already worked up the targets. It's not like we have to decide where they're going to be. Of the 4, 3 locations are already chosen, so we're now in the process of permitting those and getting them ready to drill. 1 still to be decided based on some new data that we're likely to get our hands on in the next few weeks. So part 1 is, will they deliver on what they said they were going to do? And then the other part's quite simple. Did we find any oil?
Mike Buck, new CEO of Petro Matad, Mongolian oil explorer. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And as always, thanks to you for watching.